All right, let's take this idea of a uniform emissions tax. Let's impose it on an industry with two firms, keep it relatively simple. So I have two firms, two individual marginal abatement costs, MAC 1, MAC 2. And then I've aggregated both to lead to AMAC, which is 20 minus 2/3 capital E, total emissions. And you can revisit a previous video on how to move from individual marginal abatement costs to aggregate marginal abatement costs. But let's now introduce marginal damage, and we can solve for the efficient level of emissions and what the efficient uniform emissions tax would be. All right, I've introduced a simple marginal damage function, which is just capital A, the total level of emissions. And we know that efficiency is going to require that aggregate marginal abatement cost equals marginal damage. That's the efficient solution, right? That balances cost and benefits of emissions control. And so we know that 20 minus 2/3 E is the AMAC, E, which leads to 20 equals 5/3 E, which equals 60 times 5E, and E star equals 12. 12 is the efficient level of total emissions. You can mark that right there. So the next question is, what's the uniform emissions tax that the regulator needs to impose to achieve this goal? And that's just simply where the efficient level of emissions intersects AMAC curve. It's also going to intersect MAC 1, MAC 2, and AMAC all at the same place, right? The equimarginal principle is satisfied with the uniform emissions tax. So if I plug in that efficient level of 12 here, then I'm going to get 20 minus 24 divided by 3, 20 minus 7, I'm going to get 12. And so the uniform emissions tax of 12 would lead to the efficient level of emissions control. In this case, 12, that's just coincidental. We could think, okay, well, we know the marginal abatement costs of each firm. There are two here, but it could be N firms, will all be equal. But what are their emissions responsibilities? And that's simply equating their marginal abatement costs equal to the tax rate, right? 12. And so we know that firm 2, this is the easiest. We plug in 12 here, right? They're going to equate their marginal abatement cost to the tax, right? And we know that E2 is going to emit 8 units of emissions, and E1 is going to emit 4 units of emissions, and this is their emissions abatement responsibilities for each firm. So to recap, we would set to get to an efficient level of emissions of 12, we plug in that value to the aggregate marginal abatement cost curve, and realize that the uniform tax rate to achieve our goal is $12 per unit. From that $12 per unit, firm 1 emits 4 units of emissions, and firm 2 emits 8 units of emissions. 4 plus 8 yields the 12.